Middle-earth role-playing fans, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at Hillmen of the Trollshaws. 8040 of the series, or 8040, depending how you look at it. And we're looking into the area of Rudar, which was once part of Arnor and was once, but split off on its own, became one of the sister countries. Rudar had the misfortune of falling to the Witch King's influence early on in its history, and ceased to exist as an independent kingdom, really by the Great Plague. This book came out in 1984. I bought this off eBay, as it was out of print by the time I started playing, and hard to find. So I had this one shipped back to my mom, and then she shipped it to me, so I was able to look at it. A lot of the material in Hillmen of the Trollshaws they later repurposed into their 1990s second or third edition books called Arnor. So a lot of this is in Arnor, which was really great. But I got this just to complete the set, and it's in actually really pristine condition. Excellent condition. At the back, they had what you get, had Bryn and the Barrow Downs, the rule books, and then the campaign modules at the time. I like the cover art. It's not fancy. It's not Agnes McBride. They didn't have him yet. But you do see the troll, and it looks like there's another troll hiding in the wood, hiding in the rock there. And some guy with a lantern wandering around. Not the smartest move for that guy. Alright, so when you flip it over, you get an interior of Cameth Brin and the barrack settlements of Cameth Brin. Cameth Brin was the capital of Rudar, was its principal town and fortress. And it gives you the numbers here. Tolkien never really described any major settlements in Rudar in his books. He said there are watchtowers on the heights when Bilbo went by, and later Frodo. Now, Hillmen of the Trollshaws does serve as the de facto Rudar campaign book. For some reason, Iron Crown didn't give Rudar the same treatment as they did for Cardolan and Arthedain. They kind of corrected that when they did the Arnor books in the 90s. But this serves as the Rudar campaign book as well. Again, you get a nice color map of the area around Cameth Brin. So you have Cameth Brin, and then the areas of the Clynad Krieg. So they make these guys, the Rudar area, almost like the Hillmen of the Trollshaws, almost like Scottish Highlanders. That type of idea. And then you have another little village of Taligduri, which is situated here on the map. So this is a good one. This was really excellent to do when you're doing a reconquest of Arnor, or fighting with the three sister kingdoms, because you can put little counters or pieces of paper, however you do it. You can photocopy and then write on it, and you put your forces where they are and where the defenders are, and try and break through. The guidelines, as always. Then it gives the background information, a short history of the region, which is really, it's actually nice to read. I like how MERP filled in gaps, and they tried to keep as much as possible within the Tolkien world. So they went through the Arnorian period, and they had a rebellion of a high chief of the Hillmen, the Mongfen, or Targarm. And he was determined to free all of Rudar, but needed help, so he went to Cameth Brin, and there was an alliance with the Tafalish, the ghost of the little people. So a bunch of Petty Dwarves, fleeing the destruction of Beleriand, settled in Cameth Brin. They became undead ghosts, and this guy managed to get them. But Arnor's King Eldakar, Arnor's Prince Eldakar really, he led a campaign that eradicated both the Hillmen there and the ghost, and he decided when he became king to expand it. So he's the one who created the Great Watchtower and barrack settlement. So then in 1861, with the death of King Arendar, the kingdom of Arnor was divided among his three sons, forming the sister kingdoms, and Rudar made Cameth Brin the capital. So then it goes into the Great Plague, talks about that, and then when Angmar basically just annexed Rudar for itself and garrisoned it. The lands of Rudar, you have the highlands, the Trollshaws, the lowlands and rivers, and the environs of Cameth Brin. You got your climate, the ecology, so the open lands, woodlands, the highlands, the fauna. So you have predators, bears, wolves, certain cats, deer, stuff you really don't need. Well, I guess you do need to look out for bears and cats, big cats once in a while, as well as wolves. They can make your day go south in a hurry. It's got the flora and beast and monster table of Rudar, so you're going to find trolls, obviously. Next up, it goes into the peoples of the Trollshaws, so the Hillmen, and talks how their origins. So they've been there since the Elder Days, and were distinct until TA 2000. They are clearly related to the many Dunish peoples of the West, but have long sundered from them and feel no lingering kinship with those Dunlandings who migrated northward. So they're more Celtic. MERP makes Iron Crown made them more Celtic, more Highlandish than the Dunlandings, who are like the Irish. So you got classes of society, you got politics, the military approach, economy, religion, and language. So they're not evil per se, but they don't like the Dunedain, and will align themselves with Angmar to get rid of the Dunedain. Next up, we got the Dunedain themselves, and it mentions that at their peak in Third Age 900, there were never more than a few hundred pure-blooded Dunedain in Rudar. Most of them were lesser Dunedain, so half. Even then, their numbers were not great, because Rudar is kind of a backwater in Arnor, and not all the Dunedain who settled there were the best. When you go into the Middle-earth role-playing box set for the rules in addition, the starting adventure is based in Rudar, with a castle in the woods, as well as the Loons of Long Lake scenarios. So you can use these with this book as well. Then it goes into Dunedain settlement, society and settlement. So they didn't have open villas, they had more like settlements built around towers. You got the politics, and more Dunedain fled Rudar after the kingdom was started, then moved in. So there's a decrease in the Dunedain from 861 all the way up to the Great Plague. By the time of the Great Plague, there's very few left, and those who do have sold their services to Angmar. Okay, next we got the politics. So there are 5 great Erain in Rudar, so 5 great lords. In hierarchy, they'd be lower down the totem pole than the 7 High Lords of Arthedain or the 7 High Lords of Cardolan, but they would be more powerful than the 56 Lesser Lords of Arthedain and the myriad Lesser Lords of Cardolan, and they would have various watchlands. So the En Engladel, which is the Angle, would be one of the watchlands. The other would be in the far north, the Oliad, and the other 3 are elsewhere. It talks about their military, which is too few and scattered, the economy, the religion, and the language. Next it goes into Men Mercenaries. During the Sister State Wars, all 3 kingdoms got themselves Northmen. But of course, Northmen cost more, so there wasn't all that many Northmen who came into the service of Rudar. And most Northmen are not evil per se, so they fled in the lands of the Engladel, the Angle. Now the Dunmen are Dunlandings who migrated, especially to Rudar after 300 of the Third Age, to help settle Rudar, which was more wild. And with varying degrees of success, the Hillmen and Dunmen don't get along. The Dunmen don't exactly like the Dunedain, but what can you do? And they're also used as a cheap source of military power. They're far cheaper than the Northmen mercenaries. And they rely on agriculture and hunting, and they have their own villages. Villages are organized by tribes and based on ties of tradition and kinship. Now the Dunmen do amount of raiding themselves, but most is rather harmless theft. They're no match for Hillmen, and they rely more upon numbers. So they're not exactly the most reliable troops. Their morale is fragile. Their economy is based on hunting and crops, so they have a very basic economy, and they worship is animism, though they will tend towards darknesses too. And they also have varying degrees of language. Okay. Alright, so next we come to the Petty Dwarves. They're called the Tafa Nish, or Little People, by the Hillmen, and were a dying race before the birth of the sun and the moon. They're basically just exiles from their homelands in Erebor and probably Moria, as they committed some kind of crime like murder or theft and were driven out as banishment. As a result, they declined as a people, and as a skilled people, they became more adept of living in the wild, but less adept at stonework and metalwork. So they were hunted by the elves, and the ones that are here are different than the ones that you find in the Aaron Vorn and in Beleriand. So the Tafa Lish, the ghosts of the Petty Dwarves. So the lands around Cameth Brin are shunned by the Hillmen since their arrival in Rudar for the fear of the ghosts of the Little People. Now, accordingly, one of the high chieftains of the Hillmen, Mongfen, found the secret of these potent undead, and Eldakar, the crown prince of Arnor, in the early Third Age, he also discovered them. So there are about 10 of these ghosts, and they're mystically linked to a nugget of a rare mineral crossbar. Crossbar is found only as an impurity in IRLs or as far of the far south. Okay, so it describes what these nuggets are and how they control. So it gives Miffley, who's the chieftain of these little people, control over the undead, although this may have been accomplished by other means. And the Dunedain destroyed the crossbar nugget shortly after getting control of Cameth Brin, and the ghost became free. Now this is one of, I think, Ice takes liberties with. Dwarves never become ghosts. That's not how they're built. They don't like the domination of others, and to have 10 dwarves become linked to an iron ore and dominated by them is just not right. But anyway, it goes into a description of the ghost warriors. So they're small shade-like creatures with faintly glowing eyes and teeth, move with no sound and use cunning to reach their victim's rear, then they strike quickly, ripping their throat. The ghosts can see in utter darkness and exist as part of the shadow world. Normal weapons don't harm them, as they're a ghost obviously, and they can only be struck during rounds when they themselves are attacking. Due to the eerie terror that surrounds them, those first viewing must resist a 5th level spell of fear, or flee. So they're not the most potent ghosts, but they are there. So a high level party wouldn't really fear them, but a low level party would definitely piss themselves if they saw them. And pull a brave Sir Robin from Monty Python's Holy Grail. Alright, then we go into politics and power. So the early Third Age of R'hllor is fairly peaceful until the split in T861. Then things get a little more dicey, until the destruction of Angmar in 1975. So until the creation of Angmar in 1305, the realm of R'hllor is constantly at odds with Arthedain and Cardolan, mainly over possession of Amansul and the Palantir there, because the borders of the three kingdoms reconnect at that point. So it is a hotspot, and that is the waning of the Dunedain in the north, the Petty Wars. Angmar changes the equilibrium of that, as neither of the three sister kingdoms were strong enough to take on the other two. So constantly shifting alliances. But Angmar suddenly changed the balance of power in a very extreme way. And R'hllor was the weaker of the three sister realms, so they obviously had to accepted Angmar's offer, and that quickly spelled their doom. But R'hllor is interesting. It's the home of the Rangers, the Dunedain Rangers of the North. They maintain settlements in the Angle, and periodically trolls raid down that far. All right, places of interest. Obviously the fortresses. Each of the 5 raid houses of R'hllor's Dunedain Erain lords felt compelled to build all tall towers worthy of their status. So you have Minas Brithil in the Angle, Dalgil in the southern Oliad, which are these lone lands over here, the Oliad, or whatever you call it. Minas Brethil is in the Angle. Then you have Barad Callan on the central plain, which would be up in this area. Corran Eor at the edge of the highlands in the far north. And then you have Tur Barad Tarag at Cameth Brin, and was the property of the king. There's also another one called the Eldaner Keep, which is up near Angmar, that they created. I would have thought Eldaner would be part of R'hllor, but it seems to be part of Arthedain in his day. So these watchtowers would hold over vaguely defined lands. Settlements, there's not very many. Taligduri near Cameth Brin called their whole Cron Minas, but it scarcely deserved the name. And during the fall of the kingdom, hilltop fortresses became the norm with crude towers. Okay, next up they also mentioned about Rivendell, the last homely house east of the sea, and the abode of Elrond the Half-Elven. It was established in the mid-2nd century after the fall of Eregion. So it's always been there, and the Witch King was never able to fully invest the area. He could set a watch about it, but could never get to it. So that's the only really thing that stays in R'hllor, and is a constant. Everything else kind of flows. Next up, it goes into the suggested adventures. Obviously selecting an adventure and choosing a time period, and the running of adventures using traps and items. Gives you also, you can use character law, spell law, claw law from Rollmaster series. You can mix and match, which is what I like. You can mix and match all the Rollmaster with Middle-earth role-playing. Next up, we got layouts of Cameth Brin. So it gives you numbers of the overview of the fortress, the gate, how it works. It's actually a pretty cool tower on the promontory. Probably got the idea from Scotland. Scotland's got a lot of things, not quite that grand, but in Scotland you'll see a lot of castles overlooking a loch up on a cliff. You have the Fuintur. So the gate opens into a vast hall called the Fuintur or Dark Watch. 3 immense pillars of granite support the 20-foot roof above the floor. Within these pillars are guard rooms that can only be entered from the lower levels. So it's a guard room. There'd be arrow slits and all that in there. Then they give 30 potent symbols of utter darkness, activated when anything living enters the hall. Several false exits from the hall, all trapped. And the only true exits are well concealed, and the main stairway can be reached by the passing another guard room. So if you've never been there before, you wouldn't know how to get in. And it's got the main halls, the upper halls, Armok al-Wanu. Above the king's rooms in the upper halls lie the main halls of the Petty Dwarves. They have been enlarged to give a man room to stand and used to provide them temporary quarters for the guards stationed in the spy holes at the top of Cameth Brin. And it's got the lower halls, so 2 middle barracks. 4 barracks were constructed within Cameth Brin, each designed to hold 200 troops and their commanders. So you could have 800 troops holding this keep. Whether anybody in Rudar's history ever had that kind of strength to hold it is debatable. And it gives a smithy, but after 1409, Rudar relies on weapons imported from Angmar. And it gives you the secret mine shaft, so the tale of Eldakar and Mifli. Eldakar and Mifli from the 3rd century, 3rd age is one of the main points of focus here in this book. So there's a mine shaft that you can enter to get in from behind. It's a way inside. Next, it's got the Uri Ethel, or hot spring. And there's a fell turtle that's been there since 1413. And it can only be controlled by the turtle helm held by King Broga, the Hillmen. Its others will attack anything living that comes into its watery domain. Again, this is ice taking liberties with stuff. You can see the picture of the fell turtle and where it resides in the hot spring in the lower halls. And it's got the lower barracks and all the descriptions. Then it has the lower halls and the main halls. Gives descriptions. Has an interesting tree. 25 has 2 trees, 8 feet high. The one on the left is silver, the right one is gold, and both give a B electricity critical if touched by evil people. I don't know, they would have been torn down long ago and melted for money by that point, but what can you do? Maybe during the early third age. Then you got the upper barracks and the Fuenturi Dark Watch, and you can see that the main gate there, and you can see these 3 pillars that hold all the arrow slits. They watch the area. And we go into the upper halls, and finally the king's chambers. Safe starting points for adventurers, the town of Taligduri, which stands 2 miles south of the Twisted Hill, at the mouth of the valley. It was built to protect the workers who delved the halls under the hills. But it's become a place where Dunish slaves scratch a meager existence. The chief village of Clinagrig, and you also have the Cameth Brin, which is the barrack settlement underneath Cameth Brin, and it gives you a late of Taligduri. You get the prices in the Trollshaws region, and you get adventures outside of Cameth Brin, so it's going to give more. Secret troll lair, nothing special there. Dime a dozen in the MERP world, pretty much follow the same basic stuff. You can make it because we're talking Rudar. You could have it be Bilbo's troll lair, the one he found, which would be interesting. So you could run that anytime. Next would be the Troll's Watch. After 1675 of the 3rd age, low to medium level party. Knowledge in the ways of ghosts is helpful. So it talks about the Great Plague and how the Cameth Brin was abandoned, and the barracks and all the people moved up into the lords of Cameth Brin moved into the hill complex. By 1675, the tower atop the Cameth Brin fell into disuse. So it's bringing back the Taf Alish, which is, again, ice taking. Not something you care about. And it gives you a tower plan and the actual tower itself that you would have found. Alright, next, the Tale of Mongfen and Mifli. So this is the Eldakar's campaign in the 3rd age. Mongfen was a hillman who rebelled against the Dunedain and was brutally put down by Eldakar. And it gives you a description of how it works, the main points of the rebellion, how it fell apart, and how Mongfen retreated into the caves of Cameth Brin and used the ghosts of the Petty Dwarves to help him out. And it gives you stats of Mongfin's last band as well as the lords during his rebellion. And the layout of the Petty Dwarfhold. So this is before Cameth Brin came about. So this is the earliest days, which is this is actually this would be a neat scenario to play. So the Masters of Cameth Brin, it talks about Mifli and Mongfen. Then the rescue of Alquawen, who's supposed to be engaged to Arvagel, who's the crown prince of Arnor during just after the Great Plague. It's just a kidnapping plot, and you got to rescue her, and she's not exactly the most pleasant person. So a princess bride type thing, I guess. It's all to try and start a war, and then King Broga the Hillman is is obviously one of the main instigators, as his Hillmen kidnapped her. I don't see it ever happening. This chick's supposed to be a princess of Arthedain, and his younger daughter of Aran, Lord of Carisfornan. She grew up spoiled and has a fiery temper, and she's pure Dunedain. So again, but what's interesting about this scenario is now you finally have the garrison of Cameth Brin. So you know exactly how many people are there just after the Great Plague. And it gives a list of all the various elements. So the Fuenturi leaders and the Fuenturi elite guards are usually Dunedain. Other guards are of mixed troops. Hillmen leaders, experienced Hillmen. They have the Dunish. They have their own warriors and then some orcs. And then 1671 gives you the warriors of Rudar. So you have Hacknash's band of orcs who are guarding the northern frontier. Esme's band of Easterling and Northman cavalry, as well as some mercenary lightfoot. Wolf riders, wargs. Trererith, which is a small company of lesser Dunedain. Probably the last remnants of the old Rudarum army. Broga's band of raw Dunman, Green Hillmen and Hillmen, as well as some mercenaries and their leaders. So it gives you an idea of what the strength of Rudar is at that time period, which you can use in a four king scenario with Cardolan, Arthedain, Rudar, and Angmar. It can be used in any time period. You just change certain elements of what there. As Rudar fell more into the darkness and fell more and more apart, orcs were brought in to bring up their numbers, and Easterlings began to supplant the Northman cavalry. It gives a description of who's around. Then a fourth age adventure, the cleansing of Cameth Brin. Cameth Brin would be a ruin, because after the Gondorians destroyed Angmar in the 20th century, they stayed around and they knocked down all the remaining fortresses. So Cameth Brin would be a ruin. So then there'd be obviously orcs and trolls would invade the ruins every so often. So this one's got Ligrash the Uruk. He wanders down because the Dunedain left for a while, so he would come back. He'd wander in and take up residence. So I can understand that. So you have some orcs there and some trolls. So nothing special there. Then it goes to a product listing, and finally the back cover has a map of the region. This map does connect to the fold-out maps that you see in the campaign modules. So you have Cameth Brin up here, Nathvaragla, which is mentioned in a different module, Harubar Gular, which is in the introduction rules book as one of the starting adventures. So it's a starting point. You got the last bridge, the Ian method, the Enin Gladel, and then you follow the road. It doesn't give Imladris and Cameth Brin up here, as well as the Lonelands. So it is a pretty good map to have if you don't have the other maps. Overall, this is a great book. I loved it. I wish I had it when I played, but I only found it later on and never got a chance to play it. But like I said, the 90s edition, when they released Arnor, this book was included, most of it. And it was the only book that really described Rudar for that time period. It should have been its own campaign module. I recommend this book if you're playing Middle-earth role-playing, as it would have been one of my favorites to play. But anyway, any Middle-earth role-playing fans, let me know if you guys had this book. Did you guys play it? What'd you think? And leave comments in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Hit the bell button. I'm going to keep putting stuff out. Just a matter of editing. That's all it is. Because I do have the whole series. I've still got a long way to go. So until next time, this has been Roman Daysel. I'm out of here.